Okay. All right, we are live and recording. Take it away, Naya.
So welcome everybody. Welcome to this webinar about disruptive agility, the 5 accelerators of agile leadership. My name is Naya Arduña. My expertise is in future of work, digital transformation, agility. I had the pleasure to meet Henna. I had already read her previous book, and it was for me like a great honor that I was interviewed for her blog in Forbes. Exactly, we were talking about agility and how to be agile in virtual environments. So today I'm bringing her here so she can tell us about the accelerators of agile leadership. She has launched now a new book that I learned yesterday that is already like #1 new trend release. So it's very good content what we are going to share here today. And about me, you can see more, read more in my website. I am very passionate about reskilling, and today for the people in this call, we will be giving away one session to help you to find your digital skills in this new normal. And now, Henna, if you want, you can introduce yourself.
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Henna Anam. I am the author of Wired for Authenticity. That was a book that came out about 5 years ago. It's about how we can have 7 practices to be authentic leaders. And then my latest book is called Wired for Disruption. It looks like this. That's what it looks like. It just came out last week. And the goal of this book is actually to determine how we, in the midst of all of this disruption, can be agile force for good, how we can connect with what matters to us and the missions that matter, because we can use the energy of disruption to really connect and make the changes that matter to us. And these 5 ways of being agile actually help us to do that. So I'm excited to share some of the tools of the book with you today.
Very good. So as you see in this slide, we are saying like go to menti.com. We want to really make this a very, very interactive session. So I will welcome all of you to now go in the mobile phones and go to the site menti.com and use the code 417771. 417771, so you will be able to interact with us during this webinar. We have prepared some quizzes and some tests for you, so it's all quite interactive. So if you can try now to join, you will be able to see that. So I'm going to start with the first question. So we test this and we see how it's working. So if you join menti.com and the code 417771, you should be able to get to this screen, to something like this, and then you should be able to tell us like, where are you today?
Florida.
Yes, write it in the chat. Exactly. Very good. Wow, Munich, Michigan, Paris, very good. Munich is me, by the way, and I have some people of Munich there. Very good, Munich.
Yeah, you've got a big contingent from Munich. The people from Munich are here.
Exactly. Germany, okay, Atlanta, Michigan. Let's get more people, because we are going to have a lot like questions for you. I see there are many more attendees, so please join the Menti and let us know. Okay, Rhinebeck, Michigan, Paris.
And for the people that are just joining us today, go to menti.com and please use the code 417771, because we're going to be doing a lot of fun. We're going to be doing a lot of fun engagement kinds of questions for everybody. So just get comfortable using this new Menti tool. And that's part of being just a disruptive leader, right? Is to try something new. And so I know for me, Menti was a new tool that I just discovered. Actually, Naya, you introduced me to it, right?
I'm super fan. Yeah.
That we were doing something together, you introduced that to me. That was great. So we have St. Louis and Michigan and Zurich, Switzerland and Rhinebeck. So, and please
Memphis,
send us a question in chat if you're having trouble with using the Menti tool. So there's Memphis is here. Portugal. Wow, wonderful. So we've got the Midwest, Atlanta, and a lot of, we've got a lot of, let's see, Europe here. That must be your network, Naya.
Yes, yes, yes. I see there are more people in the. I see there are more people in the webinar than the ones that are participating. So let's wait if the people can get into it, because we will be having more questions.
Okay.
I can go to the next question, and
Yeah.
so the people just join. You
Yeah.
can join spontaneously. So the
Yeah.
next question we have is Pakistan. Wow. UK.
Yay.
Okay.
The UK is here. Yeah, I'm originally from
Very good.
Pakistan, so that's why I said yay.
Very nice, very nice. So let's go to the next question. Like, how are you feeling now? Hena, I think we wanted to ask this question because we are going to talk about the disruption. So how are you feeling now in terms, like, thinking about
In
the
this
disruption when it
moment,
comes
yes, in
this
this
moment?
moment, what's the feeling that you have? So I can say for me, Naya, I'm feeling sort of excited and curious and yeah. And Nahia, how are you feeling? Oh, curious is up
I'm
there.
curious, it's good. Superb, very good with, with people. I would say excited. Yeah, I'm quite excited today.
Yeah. Okay.
See 10, 11. Okay, I see the people are
Yeah, they're now
distance.
stepping
Okay,
in.
distance. Yeah, I say distance. This depends a bit on where you are exactly, but yeah, social
Yeah.
distance, I feel as well. Happy Friday.
Yeah.
Grateful.
Yeah. Wonderful. Should we go to the next question?
Super grateful. I'm feeling great. No complaints. Very good. Very good. Thank you. Thank you for participating. Let's continue. Let's continue. I'll go for the next question. So this one, what is my mindset about this disruption we are facing? This is hard and I want things to go back to normal. I accept where we are and want to learn how to adapt. I'm excited about the opportunity to create a better normal. Okay, I see
Wow.
the people here very excited. Yeah, I mean, of course, this is the people that are joining this webinar. Hannah, this,
We've got a
it's already
self-selected
biased.
audience here.
Okay, I accept where we are and
And
we
I'm
learn.
glad that we've
Okay,
got
this is
other
happening.
points of view here.
I think it's quite biased, but it's good. We have great people in this webinar, like very much like us, I guess.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, we have like 21 answers so far. I see there are more people in the participant list. I hope they can manage to get. It's just like you can do it like from your phone, or if you are like in front of the laptop, you can use another browser and just type menti.com and then enter the code 417771. Good. So let's start, right? Let's continue, Hannah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So this is the agenda. Now I give it to you, Hannah, to introduce us to the agenda.
Yeah, so, there's a lot of us that are wanting, we've all experienced. I had this really interesting perspective that a friend of mine offered to me just last week. She said, in 1918, we had the Spanish flu. We had the Great Depression in the US, right, in the 1930s. Then in the US, we had the Civil Rights Movement, from the 1940s to 60s. And so we've experienced almost this entire, 50 years or a century of all of these disruptions in the last 3 months globally. And that is a lot for us to process. So there's a lot of us that are feeling a lot of stress. And we're hoping that there is going to be a sort of a normal that we can get back to, the good old days of January of this year, when things were a little bit better and things were more predictable. And yet, I also want to say that, everybody that I've been talking to and all the future of work trends that I've been reading about would suggest that this disruption that we're faced with, even after we hopefully find a pandemic, find a vaccine for the pandemic. The question really becomes, how do we make sure that we are able to be adaptive in the face of this disruption? So that's really the key question, right, for us, is how do we find these ways to be agile, and while things are changing rapidly, how can we be a force for good in these times? Okay, Nahia.
Good. I don't know, something happened here. Do you?
No, I didn't do anything here.
Okay, me neither. I don't know what is it. Okay, so let's go for the COVID leadership challenges.
Yeah, so I think that what the biggest challenges that I'm hearing from my clients, Naya, and I'm going to ask you to jump in as well. And for those people who are in the chat, please also share what are some of your biggest leadership challenges. The biggest ones that I've heard is a lot of people are feeling very stressed as a result of what's happened here. There is team stress and exhaustion. There is a lot of sense of ambiguity. What does the future look like? How can I prepare for it? A lot of my clients are actually talking about how can I get my team to be able to very quickly pivot. How do I keep my team engaged? How do I keep my team motivated? So many of us are in a virtual environment right now, and many of us don't know how to operate in virtual environments. So that's another big change, right, that has happened. And many of us have had to, homeschool kids. I know, Naya, you and I have talked about the schedule, for your young kids to homeschool them. So,
they could come here any moment. So I'm crossing fingers like I'm talking to you. Yeah.
Was that your kids writing on your screen?
No, it was somebody that activated the annotate. I'm thinking, oh God.
Okay. So what is that for you? Like, what are some of your challenges that you're seeing, Naya?
Well, I think for me, the biggest challenge was in the beginning, like to think like what I'm going to do now exactly. Like it happened to me. I'm very used to working from home, so fortunately that was not a problem. But yeah, I had to lead with the stress that I don't know when I'm going to see my family again. So I'm Spanish in Germany, so I couldn't meet my parents or relatives in risk times, and also of course the collaboration much more virtual, and then at the same time taking care of personal responsibilities. So yeah, I think now I would like to hear from the rest of the people, right?
Yeah.
What is the most challenge for you? So please go to menti.com and put the code 417771 and tell us as well, what is the most important challenge for you today?
And we're just going to read what we hear from you guys.
Customer face-to-face interaction is the first one. Yeah, because I think there's basically there is no face-to-face interaction, right? So for all of those that we were like used to face-to-face interaction to get a decision, now we have to switch to virtual.
Yeah, managing a lot of distractions. I guess if you're working from home, right?
Yeah, that's what
happens. Going on at home and you're not set up. That's a big one.
Keep the team engaged and focused, exactly.
Yeah.
Not being able to travel as I used to before the crisis, while a lot of our peers stay motivated when our plates are overfull and there are a multitude of distractions. Yeah, this is what I was referring, like distractions about family distractions, or it's quite tough. Mindfulness is a challenge. Yeah. Encourage creativity and experimentation. Children feel that parents have holidays.
Yeah, come play with me, Mom. You're home, right? Yes, there's a lot.
Less direct reports, a new leader due to restructuring. Well, it seems that, I mean, at work, I don't know who is here from my work, but we're also like all the time in restructuring, and it's also a bit distracting.
Yeah.
Encourage creativity and experimentation.
Yeah, and I definitely want to talk to this idea of tone deafness. It's much harder to connect. It's much harder to connect with each other, human to human, like it used to be when we were all together in the office. And particularly in the US, I can say that in the last, I don't know the individual who put tone deafness in there, what they meant, but at least what I'm noticing in the US is because of this lack of connection and understanding, and the fact that there's all of this change, that people are having a hard time to connect authentically with one another. Your managers or leaders may be putting content out there that feels like it's tone deaf, like they don't really understand where you're coming from. And there isn't enough of this, let me understand what's happening with my people. Let me understand the emotional state that they're in. And in the US, we've had, recently, this whole issue around race has really come up,
Yeah.
and it's certainly an area that has been underground and been felt by our African American colleagues here, but it's recently taken main stage because of what happened with George Floyd, and so there's been a lot in the press, and personally, I think this is a huge opportunity, right, for us to create a new normal that's better. So there are so many ways that we can find to create a better normal. Let's keep scrolling.
Well, the lack of conscious leadership, finding the best ways to really connect with others when we are at a distance, uncertainties, limited human connection, keeping the team engaged. They are reverting to individual mode.
Yeah. And ensuring that the team, can trust employees to produce. Like there's often so much that happens that I've been hearing about around micromanagement, right? If you're not used to working in an environment that is virtual and you have all of this change happening, it can create a lot of stress within everybody, right? And that can lead to a desire to control and micromanagement. Definitely see that.
Yeah, so we see like some patterns here, like some people talking about the family responsibilities, sometimes about the lack of good leadership, right? Keeping the resilient and focused, the distractions, multitasking, coping with kids and work, working at home, managing pauses. Yeah, for me, the challenge is like not going to the kitchen and eat because I'm at home all the time. Staying positive, depression, that's something very serious, yeah. Keeping having faith in the midst of uncertainty.
Yeah, and
Traveling.
let me just talk about that. I really appreciate whoever shared, their thoughts about depression, because all of these things, any one of these crises that we've been talking about, any one of them will cause. We're fearful for our lives. There's anxiety about loved ones and their health. There is social distancing that is happening. There is working from home for the first time. There are, these issues around race that we're dealing with in the US. And there's also, and obviously also globally. And then there is this unemployment and the depression. And so any one of these, can cause a lot of anxiety. And the fact that we have all three of these happening, and many others, right, happening all at the same time. And so I really want to, appreciate the person who really shared openly, how do you stay positive? And yes, these emotions are very normal and natural. And one of the things I wanted to talk about is on my website, there is a section on podcasts. And so there's a lot of really great tools about how to get connected with your emotions and be able to work with them proactively and to process them so that you're not feeling in a place of being stuck. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure like the tools that you're going to share today will really help for some of these challenges. So it's everything that is being said here is like very relevant to the topic today. So I really hope this session is going to be very useful. We have more like around keep having faith in the midst of uncertainty, traveling just to meet the loved ones, figuring out next steps in career, social life, travel, like the remote learning only. Here one person is saying that it was not easy to look for new job opportunities at this time.
Yeah, that and especially, maintaining positive optimism, right, in the middle of it. If you happen to either have lost your job or be at risk of losing your job or anxious about that, that's definitely hard. And we definitely have tools about how to deal with that.
Yes, and for the part of the new job opportunities, this is something that is also very close to my heart. I think the people, when you have like really, I was reading like the people with more digital skills and with better skills are the ones that are going to be like better positioned for this new virtual digital future, while the people who don't get those skills, it will be much more difficult after all this to get a job. So we have to go in that direction.
Yeah, Naya, I know that you have an ebook out about, how to really reskill yourself. So I would love, when we send the recording out, I'd love for you to send a link to the ebook to everybody so that
yeah, I actually think we should
see.
share also like all the resources also on your website to help to these challenges. So it's really useful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Earlier day of the lockdown was easy to connect. Lately, it became more difficult to network. That's also something I saw, that in the beginning there was much more virtual calls and so on, and now it's like everything is very long. It's happening for
Yeah,
very
I
long.
think people are tired and exhausted. I
Yeah.
feel that for myself, for sure. I think
Mm.
as we've been inside and for us, we've been social distancing a lot in Atlanta. I feel like, yeah, there's a lot of us that are, finding ourselves tired and exhausted. And I love that point around developing virtual team and individual trust and empathy. That is such an important point. It's so important now that our leaders, the people that we work for, not the people at the very top, but the people that we work for and the people that we work with, that there is that sense of human connection and trust, because you need that to get, you need psychological safety. So why don't we get into some of the tools, Nahia?
Yeah, let's start with the tools.
So what we're seeing is that there's this yearning to go back to a normal, and yet what we know is that disruption is here to stay, because there's so many consumer habits that are changing. Digital transformation has been accelerated by like 5 years. All the things that we were thinking we want to do, we've been forced to do because of social distancing. And so a lot has changed in terms of consumer buying habits. I think a lot of companies now are going to reevaluate their business models and say, we can do this digitally, or we can use bots and AI to get this done. Let's just accelerate it. So a lot of the experiments that companies have been doing will eventually translate into completely different and more agile business models. And we have to figure out how we're going to evolve in order to actually thrive. And what I want to say at the very beginning here is to say that we have within our DNA, this is what is, if you take nothing away from today's webinar, I want you to take away that we have it, you have it in your DNA to actually thrive in disruption. We have it in our DNA, it's in the human DNA to be agile, and we just need to know how to flip the switch within us so that we can be, instead of being fearful and anxious and micromanaging and depressed, that we can actually move the switch to being more curious and creative and adaptive. And what we're going to talk about are just some of the tools in order to be able to do that. So there are 5 big challenges that we face in disruption that I talk about in my book. The 5 challenges are, anytime this kind of disruption happens for us, and by the way, it happens also as we go forward, there will be changes in the business model in companies that we're working with. As we go forward, there will be, what it does is it creates this threat state in our body. So our fight-flight brain, which is our amygdala, which is in the back of the brain, gets lighted up, and it draws all of our attention to behaviors and threat states in the body. It's actually a body state that is intended for survival, right? So as we evolved, survival was the most important thing for our species. And so what happens is these threat states, even though our physical survival is not at stake, our mind and body get into this threat state. And so what we need is neuro-emotional agility. And I talk about neuro-emotional agility as the ability to be able to shift ourselves from these states of fear and anxiety that are driven by our amygdala to states of empathy, curiosity, connection that are in the part of the brain I'll talk about. It's the empathic neural network in our brain. And being able to do that not just for ourselves, but being able to do that for the people and with the people that report to us, the people that we work with. So that first shift in agility that is really critical for us in terms of leaders of the future is this ability to be able to stay connected to our emotions, not get frozen and stuck, but actually to become agile in how we manage our neurobiology. The second is the other big challenge is we used to live in a world that was a lot more predictable. This new world that we're in is now a lot more unpredictable. There's a lot more ambiguity. And so what that requires is learning agility. And by what I mean by learning agility, it's the ability to learn, to unlearn, so unlearning is a key focus as we look into leading in the future. Our mind tends to operate in habitual thought patterns. And what has happened is our environment has changed, like the movie in front of us has changed. And in our minds, because we tend to prefer safety, we tend to prefer certainty, we tend to want to believe that the future is going to be like the past, our mind hasn't moved. So our mind thinks in Polaroid pictures, but the movie keeps moving. And so it's so important to become present to what's happening now, what's changed, what am I not seeing that I need to see? Who do I need to reach out to get their perspective because I'm not seeing the full picture? It's understanding our biases and really becoming much more adaptive in how we learn. The third is fluid and virtual teams. And fluid and virtual teams is, as you've seen, now throughout the pandemic, what's happened is a lot of crisis teams have come together to solve meaningful issues, right? To respond to the crisis inside of organizations. And we've now learned that we can create teams, and we know that we can learn how to work virtually. And there are many organizations that are basically saying we will not go back to work in terms of going back to an office, or that we will have much more virtual teams. So the future will have these fluid and virtual teams. And what's really important from an ability to have impact, those virtual teams need to have a lot of trust. And I think one of the members of our group here earlier talked about establishing trust. So trust agility is the ability to establish trust very quickly. We don't have 2 years, right, to be working together, to be working in the same organization structure to have trust. Now we have to come together, we have a problem that we need to solve, and in fact we have collective problems, right, that we need to solve together. So how do we very quickly establish trust with people? The fourth is we in this world are much more interconnected and we have less individual control. So in the past, the problems we're trying to solve for today are problems of the pandemic. No one person can solve that problem. People need to come together to solve those problems. Other problems we're trying to solve for are climate change. Other problems are supply chain issues. So many supply chains got disrupted, right? So it's no longer my company, my team. It's now getting rid of those silos and figuring out how do I manage this group of stakeholders, some of whom don't even have the same incentive systems that I do. They don't work in the same organization. How do we rally together to come together, to collaborate, to solve these really meaningful problems? And that's stakeholder agility. And then the fifth is, we have to reskill, upskill 1 billion people by the end of this decade. How are we going to do that? We don't have future-ready teams. And so it's incumbent upon each one of us for ourselves to learn how to grow ourselves in all of these areas of agility, to be curious, to be reflective, to be present, and then to grow the people that are in our charge, to grow the people that are in our team. So how can we create teams of people that come together? And a big part of the team's work is to grow the people on their team, in addition to getting the work done on the team, or while the work is being done on the team. So that's the new leadership model that my book talks about.
Good. And now we are going to go through each of those challenges, and we are going to learn the tools, right, to be able to shift in agility. So let's go for the first one. We are going to start like having some quizzes. So for your information, the quiz, you can find a full quiz and get a personalized assessment in the website of Henna. We will share the links afterwards, but now I chose like 3 questions from each of the agilities, and we can see how each of us we are doing. So let's start, like menti.com/1771, and see how you can rate yourself how you are doing. Exactly, very good.
Perfect. We've got some good people who are already starting to get into the mentee. That's wonderful. I love seeing this in real time. Like this is such
it's very good. It's very good.
Naya, because it's like, wow, you get to take a temperature of where you are, and you also get to see, right in the moment, very quickly, right? Like, where is the group?
Yeah, exactly. How is it shifting?
Yeah, beautiful.
So, okay, so we see like the people tend to create a safe space for others easier than accept their own emotions. I think is interesting, right?
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, that's not, that is often, what we see is it's much easier to offer compassion to other people than it is to offer compassion to ourselves. And yet there is an incredible amount of research. So there's now 2,600 studies on self-compassion. And these studies show us that when we are able to be self-compassionate, they actually help us be more resilient in change, much more agile. They also help, these studies also actually help us extend our compassion for others. So if you happen to be a healthcare worker, there's a lot of self-compassion, um, exercises and mindfulness exercises around self-compassion. And if you happen to be a healthcare worker, they've done a lot of studies that say, I offer compassion to people, but then when I offer self-compassion, it actually helps me extend my compassion to others. So it's a beautiful, beautiful exercise. And on my website, in one of the podcasts, there's actually a self-compassion exercise as well. We'll send the links to that.
Yes. I go. So you start. I mean, not everybody has both, but let's go for the next. I want that you tell us how to manage all this neuro-emotional agility.
Yeah. So one of the things I talk about in the book is we are all experiencing fear and burnout. And when a significant change happens, this is the Kubler-Ross change curve. It talks to what happens when there is a significant change and how do our emotions go through kind of this cycle. And by the way, this cycle is not necessarily predictive for any one individual. You can't force it, right? You can't say, well, let me quickly go through shock and denial and anger, and then I'll go to depression, and then I'll go to acceptance. It's not something that you can manage for yourself. It's not something I would recommend you try to manage for somebody else. The most important thing, and all of the research which suggests in terms of neuro-emotional agility, is being able to become mindful and notice what's happening with me and getting to a place of self-compassion, acceptance of wherever I'm at. So whether I'm in shock and denial or anger or depression, the first thing to do with yourself and for others is to be able to just accept it, to say, this is where I'm at, and not try to deny it, not try to push through it. It's just to offer yourself self-compassion. And there are some exercises on my website and in the book that allow you to do that. And then as we go through the curve, what actually happens is self-compassion becomes an accelerator. So the more you can offer yourself compassion and offer others compassion, it creates a safe space for you to be able to process the emotions that are happening, so you get to a point of acceptance. And so let's go to the next page. So one really exciting piece of research that I want to share with you, it's from the work of Dr. Richard Boyatzis. He is a neuroscientist, a 30-year researcher, and he found some really interesting, in looking at fMRIs, which are MRIs of the brain, he found that our brain operates in two states. There is a task-focused network in the brain, which is all focused on, problem-solving tasks. So when our attention is in the task-focused network of the brain, we're focused on solving a problem. And most of us, in most of the time at our workplaces, are generally in the task-focused network in our brain. And it's a very necessary network. But his research found that there is another network in the brain, and that is called the empathic neural network. And the two networks kind of seesaw. So when one is present, then the other one is diminished. the empathic neural network actually is what helps people change. So all of his research showed that when we ourselves and when we can get others in a neural network state that is empathic, it helps us feel more connected, collaborative. It helps us be more agile to change, and it actually helps us make decisions with greater ethics and integrity. So the key then is to figure out, so here's the accelerator. Can we go to the next slide? The accelerator here is to figure out what part of my neural network am I in, and how can I quickly shift myself? And a great tool for doing that is in the book that I talk about. It's called the Mind Story Map. And you can use this for yourself, you can use this for other people, right? To be able to step back and notice what's happening in my mind, what neural network am I in, what emotions are present. So I want to share a quick story about a client who during this COVID time called me up and said, his name is John, and he said, look, I'm really frustrated with my peer, Bob. So his peer is called Bob, and he's really frustrated with Bob because he feels like he needs to create some new services that his organization needs to offer it because their customer needs are changing. And Bob feels like, he is not ready, his sales team is not ready to be able to offer those services. And so John came to me and said, I'm really frustrated. I've tried to go around Bob, it's not working, and I don't know what to do. I feel really stuck. I feel like our customers need this and this is not working. And so what we did is we took a step back and we said to John, let's see what's happening in your mind story map. Like, what state are you in right now? And it was very clear, right? He's in the task-focused network. He's got a goal. He's got to go get the goal done. And it's a good goal, right? But right now he sees Bob as an obstacle to that goal. So his thoughts were kind of at the top of the thing. His thoughts were, Bob is an obstacle to getting my goal accomplished. His belief about himself was, I'm the good citizen here. I need to get this. His belief about Bob was Bob's standing in the way. He's lazy. He can't get it. His emotions were one of frustration, and the behaviors he had weren't working, and it created certain outcomes, right? So this tool is a fantastic tool. Anytime you feel yourself stuck, to say, what's exactly happening? So you see the whole thing, right? You see a pattern that emerges, that is certain beliefs, thoughts, and emotions that lead to certain behaviors and outcomes, and that pattern reinforces itself, right? So then we started looking at Bob's, I said, well, what if Bob was the hero of his story? What does that look like? What does his mind story map look like? And as he stepped back, as John stepped back and looked at, he said, wow, maybe Bob has a thought that is, John's trying to push me. John is a pushy guy. I'm trying to do the right thing, in his mind, in Bob's mind, he's trying to do the right thing, but John is pushing him. So you can see how when you take a step back, you can really get a much better picture of what's really going on. So as we started to talk about, and I'll share some of the tools later about, how we develop this sense of empathy, how he developed the sense of empathy. I'll share some tools as the story goes on. So I want to maybe go to the next, maybe the next form of agility, and I'll keep sharing the story of Bob and John.
Okay, very good, very very good. I feel I'm usually the John, the one that is like, I want to do this phone, and I have to.
There's one on every team, right? There's
always
one
the
on
John.
every team who wants to push to get things done, and there are Bobs on every team who want to make sure that things are done right.
Which is very good. Which is very good. I recognize this. Yeah. Okay, good. So for the rest, let's go again. Okay, the people are already doing that
Yes,
stuff.
I
Let's
love
say
this. Everybody's like getting with the flow.
Let's go to the mentee and let's think of the learning agility. That for me is one of my favorite ones of the book. I am willing to share my assumptions and biases with others. I think I've been through a journey, Henna, on this in the beginning,
Yeah.
like 2 years ago, I would thought no, and now I'm much more conscious, of course, of the bias because of my data background and so on. I listen
Yeah,
to
and I
learn.
think, as people are voting, I will just say that all of the research suggests, right, that we all have biases. Biases
Yeah.
are normal, right? And in the book, I talk about the neuroscience of biases. Why do they exist? They're little shortcuts that our brain makes. And in fact, this was a really fun fact that our brain uses up, makes up a very small percentage of our body weight, but uses up anywhere from 20 to 30% of the calories, right? So in the
Okay.
old days, when we were short on calories and there wasn't the $1 McDonald's special value meal for our ancestors, the brain evolved to make shortcuts because so much of our calories were going, so biases are nothing other than shortcuts. They're short, very quick ways for us to say, okay, how can I quickly make a decision about something?
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Everybody has biases,
Yeah.
and more in learning agility in the times when we're, faced with situations where things are uncertain. The more we can declare, here's the assumption I'm making, here's my bias about this situation, the easier it is to establish trust on teams because then people understand where you're coming from. And now the easier it is to be curious, right? To say, hey, this is my bias and perspective. You might be seeing things from a completely different point of view. Let me try to understand where you're coming from.
I note here that, for example, the first one is 4.1, but we see in the shape that many people have already said 3 and others have said 5. So I want to stress that this agility test with more questions per each agility is in the website we will share, and you will get your personalized assessment. But here we see that the people are around 4 in this learning agility. So should we go to the tool then?
Yeah, let's go to the tool.
Here it is.
Okay, so this tool is very powerful, and it's about how we listen, right? So in the old, more predictable world, and there's still some parts of the world today that are quite predictable, right? So in the old predictable world, there used to be a very clear connection between cause and effect, right? So I push this button and my coffee comes out. It's very predictable. There's nothing. In this new world that we're in, which is much more complex and unpredictable, now, what is the way for us to open the economy back up? Who knows? Like, there's no expert. There is no best practice for us to turn to. And this might also be true for you in your work situation, right? You might be searching for a best practice or an expert, and there's nowhere to turn. You can just turn to understand other people's experiences. And so a big part of coming up with solutions is actually, learning from others. And a big part of learning from others is listening to learn rather than listening to confirm. Now, most of us, our habits are, this is what we have to unlearn, right? Most of us, our habits are when we're listening, we're mostly we listen at level 1 and 2. So at level 1, we want to contribute what we already know, right? So at level 1, it's like, okay, shut up, stop talking so I can tell you my big idea, right? Let me just tell you what my big idea is. Or we listen for the bottom line, right? It's like, okay, I know you're going into all these details. Just tell me what the bottom line is, right? So we're not really listening to how a person feels about a situation or how convinced they are. That we're not listening for the difference between what they're saying and what they really mean. We're not doing that because that's just a habitual way in which we've learned to listen. Listening at level 2 is to finding new data. It's like, Naya, I just saw this new data. This is something interesting. But what happens when we start to listen at level 3 and 4? That's magical, right? So listening at level 3 is really about listening to relate. And I so loved many people were talking about earlier today about, it's really hard to connect with each other, and there's tone deafness in this, in this new virtual world, and there's a lot of challenge for us on virtual teams. So listening at level 3 is about really feeling. So it's letting go of all of the thoughts that you have, letting go of all of the impatience you have to get to the bottom line, letting go of and unlearning, well, here's my perspective and it's right. It's actually listening to feel into and relate, to the other person. So if they happen to be, what in this case, what happened is, what happened was that John realized that Bob was really stuck and kind of frozen, right? He wanted things to be exactly right. And in fact, what was happening with his amygdala, right, in the fight flight when his body was under threat, is that he felt like he needed to make sure that his response to trying to get in control was to stop things and make sure that they were done right. And so after we talked about it, and John learned how to listen at level 3, and really what you're doing there is being able to really put all of your attention on the other person. You say, well, you've seen this, and how do you feel about that? And you're really exploring their perspective. And at level 4, what you're doing is you're opening yourself up to change your perspective, to meet the other person, and to discover something new that you did not know, right? So in this case, John is opening himself up to learning more about what's important, what motivates Bob. And only when he learns about what's important and builds that relationship with Bob can new solutions emerge. So that's learning agility.
Like very much the example, and to be conscious, like in which level I am. When I get stuck, I can think like I'm in the level 2. Okay, let's go to the level 3, and then better level
Yes,
4.
I love that. I love that.
It's very useful, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do the trust agility test. So menti.com 417741 trust agility. I'm often the first to make things right when there is a trust gap in relationships. It's a 5. The people are putting a 5 there. The first one. I just try to communicate a clear go forward plan even if the future is uncertain. I remain people of shared purposes and values. I look here, there is like a bit more of change. I see that in the first one, some people are going to the 1 and some are going to the 5.
Yeah, so while we're having people jump in and share where they are, I want to share a little bit of background on trust agility.
Yeah.
On trust agility, the key here is there's a lot of data that suggests that teams that have trust and have psychological safety are a lot more agile, right?
Yeah.
They're able to very quickly come up with solutions. And the tool that I have in the book is the empathy dialogue tool. And some people said, listen, I would love to have more empathy, more tools to have empathy. And this tool is a fantastic tool to really meet somebody face to face over Zoom and to connect with them, to understand. And it gives you some questions so you can better understand what motivates somebody, who they admire, what their values are, to share your perspectives, to share your challenges, and then to ask them a really critical question, which is on the bottom right-hand side. It's how can I be even more effective as a leader to you? Because when you get curious, that's when you start to say, okay, I'm willing to shift and be agile. And now the question is, how can I connect, right, with the person that's in front of me? And you will always get great information from them. And even if you move and do one thing and do it consistently, it will show them, that individual, that relationship matters, and you will be much more agile in terms of being able to influence them. So let's move on to the next tool, because I know we're short on time and we had promised everybody that we would get
Yes, let's go. We have two tools to go. So let's do this one quick, like the stakeholder agility, so that people understand what are we talking about stakeholder. I co-create opportunities and solutions with others. I step back to see how my work impacts the broader stakeholder ecosystems. I take the time to understand the aspirations and challenges of each of my stakeholders. So I see like here's a bit of a different. Let's go to the tool and you tell us like how we can do this better.
Yeah. So many of us, right? So many of us think of what's important to us, right? right? I'm in the center of my universe, right? Here's what's important to me. I'm in the center of my universe. We have this way of thinking about hierarchy. Here's what's important to me. Here's what's important to my boss. Here's what's important to my incentives. And a lot of reasons why we're not able to come up with creative solutions and handle the needs of stakeholders is that we don't really take the time to map out who, let's say that there is this decision that is in front of me, or this group of people that I need to influence. The first step is actually, instead of just looking at it from my perspective, which is a very narrow perspective, you start to map out who are all the people that are going to be part of or influenced by this decision. And how can I then use the stakeholder empathy map, right? Remember the map that we went through? And map out my ecosystem and really go and take the time to get to know my stakeholders, to understand, do deep listening at level 3 and 4, right? To see what's important to them. And using this tool then allows us to be able to, really map this out. Let's go on to the next slide.
Yeah, and the last one is the growth agility. The growth agility is related to these topics like I coach others to help them to grow. Do I take personal accountability for my growth and development? I ask good questions to help others to come up with solutions. Do I really do that? Tell us how we can grow better in the agility tool.
Yeah, and I just encourage people to continue voting because we'll continue to kind of tabulate those votes and share those back with you.
Yeah.
So the tool that I love that is part of the growth agility is a tool that I call the experiment to grow tool. So what happens is we get so hyper focused on the right side, right? Here's the result we want to get. And we start trying to make that result happen. But what we don't understand is that the result we get is actually driven by our behaviors, right? Remember the mind story map? And that is driven by our thinking and feeling. So the results that John was getting, his current state was, I had him map it out. What's your current state? He was like, okay, I think Bob is standing in the middle of me and my goal. I feel really frustrated. I'm trying to go around him. I'm trying to convince him, and I'm getting nowhere. Then we said, okay, well, what is the future state that you want? And as he started to look at the mind story map, he started saying, wow, I think my mindset about this is all wrong. The future state that I want is still the end outcome, but I actually also want a better relationship with Bob so that we can become more agile in working through not just this solution, but other solutions together. And as we started to look at the future state, he started to identify, okay, I'm going to go do a different experiment. In the think and feel side, I'm going to experiment with the listening tool, and I'm going to go and do a very specific experiment just to go learn how deeper listening is going to impact the relationship. What was I surprised by? How was I wrong? What new information did I get as a result? And how did that impact my relationship? So now he's doing experiments in the thinking feeling, right? Rather than being stuck on the getting. And when you do experiments over here, you learn something new, and that helps you be more agile. It also helps you eventually get to the results that you're looking for. So
yeah, what I really like is that you are giving us like a lot of tools that here that we can like put them in practice like
fast,
today,
right? Because we're trying to get it done in an hour. But the purpose of this is I really wanted to let the people know that there's a ton of tools that we right now what we need as people is we need very simple tools. We don't need to be overwhelmed by data and all this. We just need simple tools that we can put to practice that actually help us be more agile. So this is, we didn't get into all the tools. I want to let you know that these are all the tools that are in the book.
Yeah. And we can use them and experiment with them as soon as possible. I've seen that. So how do we continue the conversation since we see we are 2 minutes almost there? We have some, but I would like to cover all this content now. How can we continue the conversation, Henna?
Well, I think the first thing you can do is order the book on Amazon. And Naya has already ordered it, right? You downloaded it. it was actually, I'm happy to say, it was the number one of the in one of the Amazon categories. It was the #1 release, and so it's the book is only a ebook right now. It was created as an agile book, so we wanted to get the tools out. So we created it only as an ebook, and we're trying to see if we can do, if there's enough demand for a paper book, then we'll go ahead and do it. Then you can follow us, both Nahia and I. We're going to be doing a lot of these sessions on LinkedIn Live. In fact, we're going to take, each tool and go into it in much depth. And then we offer, customized webinars and education and coaching programs. So, I really appreciate you guys being here. And Nahia, where do we go from here?
Yeah, I welcome you to join the movement. So we will send all these links later, and we will send a lot of information later. So you just have to check your email. I'm conscious it's now 1 hour. So for the ones who want to stay, we have prepared a small quiz, because I always like a bit of competition in the end. And for the winner, can have like a session with me to talk about what digital skills you have and how you can bring them to the next level. So for the ones that stay here, we'll do it quite quick. It's a quiz with 3 questions. So now is quiz time. So again, in the menti.com, and if you use the code 417771, oh, I see I have a lot of people already. Like,
whoa, I love these icons.
So each of you, you know who you are. Like, we have a unicorn, we have hearts, we have a shoe, we have a banana. So we wait a bit more to start. Okay, there are like, I see that we have like much more people. So what I'm going to do, exactly, wrong answer gives 0 points. And you have to answer the questions. I'm going to ask 3 questions, and you have to answer correct and as fast as possible. And we will see who is the winner. So let's start. I give a bit more time. 20, seems to stay at 20. Okay, 20. So let's start the quiz. So the questions will appear. The book we are discussing today is, look at your phone, Wire for Good, Wire for Disruption, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
I would love to discuss The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Okay, everybody, but we will see who was faster now.
Okay, this is speed. Okay, awesome.
Yeah, it's a speed. It's totally correct. Yeah, because it's a speed. So this was the easiest question. Yes.
Yeah.
So the leaderboard. Let's see who is the fastest of the team. Okay, it's quite. Crazy. Everybody was super. Like, I think it's milliseconds. Okay, Natalie. Okay, Natalie is the fastest. Okay. But let's go to the next one. And this is like the top people. But let's go to the next one. So take answer fast to get more points. Which is not one of the unique agilities? Look at your phone. Stakeholder, decision making, trust, growth. See people voting. Almost everybody has voted.
I love this competition.
I love it as well.
It's fun.
Oh, look, like this is like most of the people got it right. Decision making, but we see already there are like not everybody got it right.
This is great.
The last question is a bit more difficult. Let's see how it looks now. The leaderboard. It's Natalie again. So these are like the unique ones, and now it's added. So Mario, good. Mario and Natalie is there. Okay. Mario and Natalie there. But actually, there's now the 3rd question. So there is still like anybody can win. So let's go for it. This was a bit more difficult, I think, but let's see. Which are the 4 levels of listening? Hearing, seeing, feeling, inspiring. Hearing, seeing, feeling, listening. Hear, seeing, feeling, intuiting. 3, 2, 1. Okay, not everybody answered. Okay, most of the people got it right.
Awesome! Look at that.
So good. The people are listening. Listening.
We've got some competitive people, and they were paying attention.
It's good. It's good. Okay, so let's see now who is the leader. Okay, who made it very fast? So Lange made it very fast. Hartestorm made it very fast. Oh, it seems that Mariana didn't.
Oh my God.
So Lange Moret, okay, I don't know who you are, but we connect and we see, we can have a session about digital
Wow, that was
skills.
a surprise one, right? I'm not sure.
Exactly. So until the end, it's like, until the end. Okay, very nice, very nice. Congratulations to you.
All right,
And
everybody, thank you so much
yeah,
for being part of our session today.
exactly. Yeah, I think we can just like, we have the last, like, what are you going to do after this webinar? Take the agility quiz, join the movement, share my learnings of today. We will send some information now, and we are very happy. I had a lot of fun, Hannah. I liked it a
Yeah,
lot.
this was
We will check now
fun.
the chat if there are questions, and expect then an email from us with all the information.
Thank
And
you so
please
much,
share what
everybody.
you learned with us. Share this, because I think that honestly, I mean, I really believe these are like very practical tools and are super useful now in the time of disruption. So if all of us can use them, I mean, it will be, our lives will be easier and will be better.
Thank you, my partner.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Everybody, please, we'll send you a link to her ebook too. So it was great to connect with everybody.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you. It was fun. Bye. Ciao.